Yeah, it's always fun. Just he probably done this a lot on maybe on Facebook back in the day. I don't know. It's very similar to the Facebook Live thing. But there we are, and we are live. So I'm so excited for this conversation today with Suzy Ashworth. We will be introducing her shortly, but welcome to Sacred Business Stories. This is our weekly Substack Live, where we really just have an honest conversation with entrepreneurs about what it looks like to build a business that aligns with your deepest truth. And so, yeah, I feel that Suzy is someone who's done that. Had the privilege of meeting her in person. We were just talking about it maybe like 2 years ago. In Colombia, and I think the first time that we talked was on a bus ride, and didn't know anything about you. And since then, I've learned a lot about you. But honestly, I haven't heard your full story, so excited to kind of unpack that a little bit here. But we'll just give it a minute for people to join, and then we can kind of jump into the official intro.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm very happy to have you here, and thank you so much for creating a space for this conversation. And I always like to remind people like why we create a Secret Business Stories. We believe, and that's kind of like the why we create a Secret Business Flow. That there is a way that you can create a business that puts all of who you are forward. That you can honor all your challenges, all your victories, all your certifications, and then from that space of wholeness, then we start like serving people. And I believe, from what the little that I know from you, that like you do have a sacred business, that you do inspire people with like your life story, like your challenges, your inspirations. And we really wanted to create a space where people could see others doing that. And then from that space, we give permission to others to step more fully into, whatever their heart is calling them. So thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to know more about you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I don't do lots of interview story things like this, but the ones that I do now, quite intuitively, are always ones that feed my soul. And so, even just this little intro, I feel myself expanding and relaxing, and I'm like, okay, this was a good choice. So, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so for those of you joining us live or kind of watching this after the fact, for the official bio on Suzy and what she shared, she's a single mom of three children, high school dropout. You beat me. I'm actually a college dropout, so we have a little bit in common there, but maybe you were able to drop out of the system a little earlier than me. Um, she has a best-selling book, Infinite Receiving, and she is a success coach who's um, not insignificant, 6 million in revenue since 2020, and now she is also certifying other coaches, helping them to go out in the world and change lives. And so, yeah, that's kind of the official bio. But at this point, yeah, I would love to kind of just turn it over to you, Suzy, and like just hear more about your story, kind of behind the scenes, like how you ended up doing this work. Reading a little bit about your past history. Yeah, it sounds like you've had this kind of twisting, turning journey, and I think it'll be really, really interesting for people to hear from you.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to not all the way back because maybe that was a little too much. We don't have the time. But, things really changed for me when I got pregnant with my first son and my only son, actually, but my first child. And it's wild to me that that was 14 years ago. But the moment that I fell pregnant, it hit me immediately that if I wanted to be able to say to him, you can do anything that you want to do in this world, I needed to be living that because I intuitively knew that kids do what they see rather than what you say. And, you know, I want to say, I look back at that version of me and I'm like, yeah, well done. But now I'm living with a 14-year-old who just wants to do anything that he wants. And I'm like, what did I program into him? I'm sure that it will all work out well in the end. But that was when I knew that I needed to leave my job. I was selling advertising space for the Guardian newspaper, which is kind of a bit like the New York Times, I suppose, And I knew that I needed to retrain. Now, it actually took me until having my second child, Coco, so 2 years later, where I was like, if you don't do this now, you are never going to do it. And I retrained as a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist and a hypnobirthing instructor. And that really changed my life. You know, I had all three of my kids at home in the water. I felt so inspired by that journey after the first two. I was like, I want to teach other people how to do this. And so I did. I retrained, and it's a very interesting industry, the birth industry. You would think that it's all kind of peace, love, and harmony, but it's actually very controversial. It's very competitive. People are very polarized. So it was this real baptism of fire of who are you? What do you stand for? Are you willing to speak your truth? And I was doing something that felt a little bit subversive because at that point in my life, I was not a crunchy mother, and hypnobirthing people at that time, it was like you knit your own knickers and everything's vegan and this. That just wasn't me. I'd come out of media, I was drinking champagne and getting my nails done, and I was a control freak. That's what took me down that route. And that was one of my biggest gifts because I was different. And so I created the world's first video based hypnobirthing program and really threw myself into it, loved it. But what I understood pretty quickly is that I loved business, I loved marketing, I loved the building a brand online more than I loved babies and birth and vaginas and boobs and breastfeeding and all of that stuff. And so I started teaching other pre and postnatal specialists how to build their brands online, how to make their first £1,000. That was what I was teaching people. And yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's like very inspiring, and I love what you said. And maybe you could speak a little more. I don't know exactly the words you used, but you said something about like that made you different, right? And how, because that you could see that as a strength, but you could also see that as like, oh, now I need to hide. And I see that a lot of people like, go for the maybe the I don't know if the easiest path, but like hiding and like not accepting they're different, that they maybe see the world in a different way. So could you speak a little more about that?
Yeah, I think that what I knew unconsciously then is ultimately what has become one of the pillars of infinite receiving, which is knowing your unique greatness and understanding that this thumbprint, there is no one in the universe that has ever had it, and there is nobody that will ever have it. And we take our uniqueness for granted so much of the time. And it is especially, I mean, it just is, it's the thing that makes us special. But in industry, in business, it is your ability to take often proven pathways, but then superimpose yourself onto that pathway. That's the thing that enables you to stand out, be heard, and for people to be have something to latch onto. Otherwise, you are competing with people who have infinitely more resources, who have got much bigger audiences, who have much more credibility and authority because they've been doing it for forever. You try and be that person, you're not going to win. So it is
Hmm.
much better off you really giving yourself permission to work out who you are and then be who you are. And I say this from a place of also recognizing that we're constantly evolving. So who I was 12 years ago is not who I am now. And who I'm stepping into as now I'm a 46-year-old woman who's got three kids who are now quite, they're not self-sufficient. My youngest is 9, but she's a lot older now. So I'm now discovering a whole new version of myself, and that also has to be, I have to give space to that in my work because it's changing the way that I look at the world, how I speak, what I think, what I'm willing to tolerate, what I'm not willing to tolerate. All of that also has to be in the business now.
Hmm. Yeah, like it's and And how did you like it? Maybe you went through that, but like in this path to authenticity and like, like what I'm willing to tolerate, what I'm not willing to tolerate, like what I want to create for myself, how I want to serve my kids, how my business support my lifestyle. You're probably criticized a lot too, right? Because you will start doing things in different ways. You might face rejection, and I also see that with like our like readers and listeners and clients that like sometimes like you shut down and then you feel that like I'm doing something wrong. So how do you deal with rejection if you had that, in your
Yeah.
life, and just keep going, keep showing
Yeah.
up?
I think I was talking about this just a couple of days ago. Rejection is not the thing that presents itself for me, but it's the fear of judgment.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Not so much just the fear of judgment, but just actually being judged and feeling judged for the decisions that I make. And my biggest kind of Achilles heel actually is around motherhood and that fear of people perceiving me as a bad mother because I am more unconventional. My passion is pole dancing, and I'm there and I'm wearing skimpy outfits and I'm dancing around the pole, and people are like, what on earth is she doing? And I'm being me. And at the same time, so there's a part of me that is very irreverent and is very much I don't care. And then there's the other part of me, the more human part of me, that's like, oh, I don't want to be judged. And I am a good mum and I want you to see me as a good mum. And how I deal with that is really reconnecting with essence, God, the universe, whatever your choice of name is. That fear of rejection is based in the illusion that we are separate from the pack and separate from all that is. And when I am grounded and anchored and I'm able to take a step back from fear, because I can feel it in my body when I'm operating from fear. And so when I can bring my awareness back to, I know that whatever is going on, it's not truth, it's certainly not life threatening, it's not truth. Go back, anchor myself into essence, anchor myself back into God, and understand that that fear of rejection and that fear of abandonment is an illusion. I can never be
Hmm.
on my own. I'm surrounded by a team of 1,000 angels at all times. So anything that I am facing, any challenge, any experience that I am facing in the human realm, in the 3D realm, is there for my learning, it's there for my remembering. And from that
Hmm.
place, it all feels often it's unimportant, or if I do deem it to be important, then it's a lesson that is worth remembering or learning.
Hmm.
Bigger picture.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, it's so wide, like creating that space and just recognizing that it is an illusion and everything is just happening here, right? Like um and it's just for us to step more fully, I think, is this invitation to become even more this authentic person, and facing that part of you that like, oh, what is this?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I know Phil has a bunch of questions. Like we kind of like we have like a structure, but I'm very curious about many things.
Keep going. I feel like
Yeah.
you two have a lot in common, and this is just fun for me to listen. So keep going, Carolina.
Uh,
Mhm.
like I'm also a mom and I have two kids, and I feel that I'm very like unconventional as well. And one of my biggest fears as well is like how I am perceived as a mom. Um, like I don't participate in the conversations at school the way most of the moms engaged, and then the worries and how I relate to homework and then all of that. And what keeps me going is something that you said that like I want my kids to have the permission to be themselves.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is, I need to keep walking my path.
Yeah.
Um, my kids are like my oldest daughter, she's 8, and I have a little one, he's 3. But you like down the road with like a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, like, um, and I don't know if they're in that age yet that they can see that. Do they feel this inspiration? Do they see that you walk your path? Because that's another thing that it's like they don't.
They do not. I think maybe my 8-year-old, who's going to be 9, is slightly more dialed in. Um, she's like got a wise head on her, so I feel that she does see me. The other two are doing everything that they can do to avoid seeing me at all costs, and I think that that's, it's by far the hardest job, because my belief is that they are there to teach us, and they're the lessons. They hold the mirror up when it comes to practicing what you preach. Can you practice what you preach? Can you stay
Yes.
calm? Can you be in the pause? Can you let go of control? Do you really trust me? Do you really trust God? Because I am going to push every single button. And my 14-year-old, especially right now, he's not the carbon copy of me, but I was not a great 14-year-old. He is going down his path. He's exploring, he's pushing boundaries, he's doing normal things for a slightly more rebellious 14-year-old. And God, it absolutely terrifies me. And
Hmm.
when we are in terror, what do? We try to gain control. And so, they I want them to get the best of me, but often they see the worst of me when it comes to really practicing it's much easier to do it with clients. It's much easier to do it on this live. Like we're cool, But when my 14-year-old is at his dad's and has disappeared for a day, it's like, can I really trust?
Yes.
Can I really trust that I'm not supposed to be here trying to control the path for him? That I'm really supposed to be a custodian. And when he's not going to know that until probably he has kids,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
certainly I don't, I lost my foster mother at 19. And I always talk about that being one of the biggest gifts for me, because it meant that at 19 I was forced to look at life through a very different lens. Up until that point, I was the selfish, self centered teenager who really thought I knew it all, who really didn't give a shit, who really had no idea about mortality. When you lose somebody that close to you at that age, it forces you to look at life differently. So, my sense is that it's not until he's going to be a lot more mature, and then my daughter a lot more mature, that they actually realise, one, I'm a human being, two, that I was not only put on the earth to ride them around and take them to their friends at the drop of a hat, and that, you know, I am just trying to work it out as I go along, and I'm doing my best, and it was pretty okay, you know.
Hmm.
I wish, I'm just going to say this, I feel like I'm at a therapy session. What I wish is, I see all of these kids, especially in the spiritual world, and all of the kids like really dialed in, and they're really just like, my mum's amazing, and we hang out, and we're just best friends, and we're just, my kids are not like that, they're more normal, as I am, more normal. And so, yeah, I hope one day you'll be like, actually, you were pretty cool. You did a good job, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's like it takes some time. And if you think about, like, if I think about myself, it took a while for me to recognize who my mom was and how much I admire her and her path and everything that she did. And it wasn't like when I was 14 or 15. That was like
No.
much later down down the line. But yeah, like another question I have for you, like, and it's related like to women trying to become entrepreneurs, and like you're very successful, and I believe that your success does not come from playing safe, right? And there is this like, I want to jump and I want to express myself. And I think that we have this like desire that like burns, and you're like, we want to do that. But then I have kids, and as much as, and we have clients, and I've had clients before, and I see that with friends that they're like, yeah, I'm going to wait until my kids grow older until that, because they're playing this in the safe space,
Mhm.
but I feel that they are missing out their
Mhm.
own lives, and they're also um, putting the kids in a space that might not serve them in this context of like, you need to become who you came here to be. And and as we walk our path and as we walk our talk, like we become examples. So what would you say like to this women that like maybe have little kids, maybe just like young adults, and they're like, I want to express myself fully. They have a beautiful gift to share, but they fear that they're gonna maybe putting their kids at risk, because they are like
Yeah.
choosing a more unconventional path in a way. So I'd love to hear what you have
Yeah.
to say.
So I think the first thing that feels really important to say is there's a distinction. There's a distinction between the woman who wants it, and then the woman who doesn't want it. And,
Yes.
it's respecting whatever path is presenting. But the woman who wants it, for her, I mean, there's so much. Okay. I absolutely believe that I am here today, one, because my mother passed when I was 19 and she was 56. That's 10 years away for me.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
We had no idea. Last year, I buried one of my best friends. She's 46. I am so acutely aware that tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so many people move through their lives thinking that they're going to get tomorrow, they're going to get tomorrow, they're going to get tomorrow. It sounds like a cliche, but cliches are around because they are true. Tomorrow is
Mm-hmm.
never going to come. And so you have to make a decision that if my life was going to be taken away tomorrow, if my life was going to be taken away in a month, am I living my life the way that I want to look back at my legacy? You know? And if you are,
Mm-hmm.
great. And if you are not, you have to make a different decision. Secondly, I trust that my children chose my ex husband and I as their parents. And they chose us because we are here to teach them certain lessons. We're part of their soul contract for learning. In order to fulfill, and it's just my belief, but in order for me to fulfill my end of the bargain, I have to live my life. If I don't live my life, I'm stopping them from learning the lessons, or they
Mm-hmm.
have to find, it's so I'm like, this is part of my purpose to show them how to live so that they learn how to live. Not for me, not for their dad, not for their partner, not for their kids, but for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it's all wrapped up. It's like not advice. It's just that this is how I view the world. And that viewpoint enables me to make decisions that other people would not make. And I sit here recognizing that it's still very limited. I could still be going so much bigger. I could still be honoring those calls and those nudges so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And how I'm coaching myself, how I would be doing that is to create more space to go internally so I can be less reactive and more tuning in with what is the call, where am I being nudged, where am I being guided, and trust myself and the universe, God, enough to follow those nudges.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much. It's a powerful message, and yeah, this idea of taking tomorrow for granted, it kills us slowly, in my opinion, right? And then all of a sudden you wake up and you don't have a loved one, and something happened, and you're like, what about now? And
Mm.
yes, yeah, thank you. It was very, very inspiring, and I really hope this message touches like other women's heart to the
Mhm.
point that like you can't wait your kid to be 20, 30, 40 to do something with your life. You can't think that like they chose you because you provide safety. Like they chose you exactly for the reason that you said, like because you decided that you would live your life and they want to live their lives too. So that's very, very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Susie, like connected to this, a lot of our audience are kind of earlier in their journey, and so maybe they're still, sitting at the desk, kind of like when you were talking about working at the Guardian, and so, and then it's kind of there's a way in which you can hear an interview like this, and it could be like, okay, here's the Susie now. She's this best-selling author. She's, made £6 million, and like, but we don't necessarily always see kind of what it was like to be in that kind of messy middle, and so we have this term we call the love-led leap, which is kind of this moment when you decide, that okay, I'm moving forward, with my mission, with my purposeful work, and so I was wondering if you could kind of take us back
Mm.
to that moment. Like, how did you know, like, you had this vision, there's the tension of being it sounds like it was at the timing of being a new mom, you're working this job, and like, how did you know like this was the time to make the shift, to make the transition? And was it gradual? Was it an overnight kind of like, I'm all in, and I feel like there's different paths for everyone, but I would love it if you could kind of take us back to the Susie that was present at that time and let us
Yeah.
in a little behind the scenes if you're willing.
So I used my maternity leave to retrain, and that in and of itself was pretty controversial. I was going off to study when my daughter was a month old. Now, I'm not somebody who like regrets many things. I mean, I certainly don't regret that. Is it what I would recommend a brand new mum to do? Not necessarily, no. But that's part of my DNA. It's like, you've got this. And so I retrained, and I think the most important thing is that I was just looking at the next step. Fortunately for me, I had no idea about this online world. So I wasn't comparing myself. I wasn't thinking, oh, I can have my first 10K month, or oh, I want to write a book. I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking the last time I went to study was, when I was 15, 16 years old and I didn't finish. Like, I just need to find a course that I can get a qualification in, and at the end I could potentially use for work, or not potentially, I could use for work. It needs to not be too academic because I didn't think that I was very intelligent at that point. It needs to be very practical, and I just need to be able to do it. And so that was the biggest gift. I think a lot of what stops people is them trying to anticipate like their 5-year plan or their
Mhm.
7-year plan. They've never done it before, so they don't know, and then they start getting their knickers in a twist because it's like, oh, they've got this document and doing. It's like, what's the next thing that you need to do? And for me, that was retraining. And as I said, I retrained as a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist, and I had to also make a decision, and the decision was I am going to give 100% to this course. Like, I am going to learn. And I finished top of the class. So the level of confidence that gave me as somebody who had really just thought of themselves as being a little bit stupid was really amazing. I made a decision, I stuck with it, I went all in, and I finished top of the class. That was great. It was like, okay, now I've finished. What do I need to do next? I need to get some clients. So, back then we were on forums and we were going into like chat rooms, and it was wild. But it was always just the next step. If I tried to anticipate like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that I would have a Sunday Times best-selling book, or I would have made millions of pounds, or it would have just, there's no way I could have predicted what was going to happen over the next 10 years. I do not try and predict what is going to happen over the next 10 years. I know that it will be wild. I know that I will look back and be like, oh my God, I had no idea. I know that it will be exciting because of who I am and how I show up. But back at that time, it was just the next step, and that's really how I operate. Yes, I would like to write a couple more books for sure, but it's not in a right. It will happen when life says, okay, you've now got enough experience for the next one. You know, I know what they are, but I don't have the experience yet. But anyway, I digress. Just the next step. What's the next thing that you need to do in order to take you one step further away from what it is that you're doing right now? I think often we fixate on the dream and the vision, and it can be hard for some people. So I just knew that I wanted to get out of the Guardian, so I was moving away. And then, as the longer I spent in the industry and just practicing and trying and failing and succeeding, then I started to get an idea of what would be cool. It's like, I want that. So now I'm going to go for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all through your direct experience, it seems, and that kind of brings me to my next question. Like so like for our clients, we kind of teach a little non-conventional planning process, but it's a lot about honoring both essence and structure, and in the structure, it's exactly what you said. Like it's coming back to what is the next thing, what is the next thing, and so. Um, but knowing you, I feel that you hold a very large vision, and that vision is probably expanded over time as you've expanded and evolved. But I'm curious how you kind of hold these two aspects now, like allowing yourself to go into dream expansion mode, but then grounding it back to that one thing, which is equally important. And I feel that people tend to get stuck on one end of the spectrum. Like some people are really good at this, like, what's the next thing? But then they have this limited vision. And then some people get too kind of untethered in a sense and can't come back to earth in a way with the actions. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you dance with that in your own life.
Yeah, I think that it being in environments like this. So I think it's the people that enable me to stretch my vision. And we were talking about when we met, we were in retreat on
Mhm.
retreat in Colombia, and it's in spaces like that or masterminds where you're not the smartest person in the room and there are people who are doing incredible things. It's like, wow. And that retreat was very special to me because the first time I went on, that was when I decided that I was going to become a seven-figure entrepreneur. And it was literally doing a cliff jump, which is something that I would never, ever, ever in a million years have done before that retreat. I knew energetically, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I've decided that I'm going to make seven figures. And prior to me jumping, it was being around these seven figures and multiple seven figure, and some, in one case, 8-figure entrepreneurs. And rather than being like, oh, they're so different to me, or they've got all of this, I was looking for all of the similarities. I was looking for like, oh, they're married. Oh, I'm married too. Oh, they've got kids. Oh, yeah, I've got kids too. Oh, they're pissed off about that. Oh, I get pissed off about that too. I was just looking for all of the similarities. And the more similarities that I found, the more likely it made it for me to be able to have those dreams too. Then when I challenged myself to jump, that was the energetic shift. That was the identity shift. I went from somebody who would never jump off a cliff to somebody who you just jumped off a cliff. I went from somebody who didn't think they could become a seven-figure entrepreneur to somebody who could become an entrepreneur. And those environments give you the expansive thinking and something to energetically calibrate to. Then it is the declaration. And for me, I've only not had a coach for 6 months of my entire life. And I really credit that level of support. Is often the coaches that will give me the structure. They will ask me, what is it that we're doing this month? What is it that we're doing this quarter? What do you need to do in order to make that happen? And it's that accountability that helps me like take consistent action.
Mm. Yeah, it's so cool that I mean, and it's so cool that you mentioned this about the event because that's been my experience too. I've told this story like one of the very first events or conferences or masterminds I went to. I was still with my previous partner, and we had a private practice. And it was this like link I found online, and it was for this like like private exclusive event in Boulder, Colorado, and it was like 40 people. Tim Ferriss was one of the participants, and all people at that level. And I was like, who am I to go to this event? But I was
Yeah.
like, but who am I who found this link? And like, it's
Yeah.
right here in front of me. And it was something like $10,000, which for me was a lot at that moment. And it was for like a day and a half or something like this. And I was like, I'm going to put myself in that room. But like my mindset around that, which is so important. And I feel it's like what you were just describing is when you go into a situation like that, and you see that these people are all humans. They're just like you, like all these
Yeah.
similarities. And you have these conversations. You're like, wait a second, like I can do this too. Like, yes, you've got some cool stuff on your credentials list there, but like, how different are we really? And it's that
Yeah.
belief and wiring that mindset that I feel kind of set the stage for a lot of what I've been able to accomplish. And then, yeah, exactly. We said having the support of coaches. I'm like you. I've always had different levels of mentors and coaches, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and yeah, very, very cool to hear your experience as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And related to that, like I'm curious, because I love what you said about like recognizing yourself in other people's
Mm.
success in a way, right?
Mhm.
Like I see your success, so then I feel it in me, and then I see that like, oh, you have a partner and you have kids and you did this and you struggle with that, and then like at the end we're like all the same.
Yeah.
And while we see like the way we work with people, like Phil is more like helping people with like the plan, the strategy, the
Yeah.
structure, and then I go more into like the essence and the connection with the self, and then the intuition, and it is a combination of those two things.
Yeah.
And what we are seeing is often it's not lack of structure. It's not
Yeah.
no, like you know what to do,
100%.
you have like the next step in front of you, but it's a shift in belief
Yes.
about who you are that actually helps you, in your case for example, to jump off the cliff and like, here I go, and like I don't care what's going to happen because I fully trust. So if you were to like go back and think of like, what is the belief that I had to shift inside of me to allow myself to receive that abundance, like what would that be? Like if there's one, maybe it's like many, but
Yeah.
like
I mean, I think the thing that we need to just address is that I did not fully trust as I jumped off that cliff. I was absolutely petrified, but I did it anyway. And I did it anyway. So, one, I didn't want to let down my team. I was with like I didn't want to down my team. But two, I lied to myself to get myself up the cliff. Like I was like, I'm just going to walk up the cliff, and then if I don't want to jump, I'm going to turn around. There was only one way down, but I just needed to. Mm, I just needed to convince my subconscious mind that it was going to be that I wasn't going to die if I went to the top. So, and I think that it's in that little piece. It's the subconscious belief, so the belief that often we're not even aware of, that stops us from taking the next step. And so this really comes back to what I was saying before about that internal discussion, that getting quiet.
Mhm.
Often we're distracted by busyness, so we're finding excuses, reasons. We can't do it because of this, we can't do it because of that. We distract ourselves so we can't hear the truth. But for every single one of us, 99% of the time, the reason that we're not doing it is because we are afraid that we are going to fail. And in that failure is going to be, it's going to affect our mortality in some way, shape, or form. Whether that
Mhm.
is prestige, respect, our homes, our families, it's life or death. And so the shifting of belief and identity comes with really being willing to make it no big deal.
Mhm. Just as simple as that, right?
Yeah,
You either will or you won't, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You're really
Susie,
going to.
I can honestly talk to you all day because I feel like you're totally on the complete wavelength with us. But I know you said you have a time that we need to end, and I also just wanted to give you just a couple moments before we wrap, just to share. Like, I know you're not here officially on Substack. We'd love it if you came and hung out with us more on Substack. But for anyone who's listening and resonating with what you're sharing, anything that they've heard here today, or even in the recap after this, yeah, if someone's curious about your work, where can they find you? What would be a first good step if
So
they want to come into your universe?
thank you. So I am definitely hanging out on Instagram on Suzy_Ashworth. And actually, we have a masterclass coming up tomorrow
Oh,
for
wow.
anybody who is interested in becoming a coach. We teach how to teach and support people in really creating amazing transformations. But come over suzyashworth.com/unlock six figures, I think is the title. But if you come to me on Instagram and ask me for a link, I can also give it to you.
Cool. Cool.
So that's the vibe.
Awesome. Well, yeah, well, thank you so much for being here with us, for giving us your time so generously, and yeah, I really appreciate you. And yeah, so we'll be sure we get all this to. So after this, we send out kind of a replay of this live, and we'll make sure all your links are in there as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, um,
This is
that's all we
great.
have. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And I need to say hi, Philip, because Philip's another Columbia friend who's got job.
Yeah, Philip's on the call. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
at that event as well. So
yeah.
um yeah. So
But
yeah, thank you again, and yeah,
thank
have
you.
a beautiful rest of your day, and
Yeah,
thank you so much
thank
for
you
being here.
so much, Susie. It was very nice getting to know you more.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.